In dominant display, in my opinion, Joe Joyce completely schools Daniel Dubois with his jab. Now, this was actually a pretty good fight. Um, it was one that held a lot of intrigue for me because I'm a big fan of Joe Joyce, and on my Patreon, I talked about how I thought that as long as Joe Joyce was able to make it out of the first couple rounds with Daniel Dubois, he was going to dominate him. Daniel Dubois got a lot of flaws, and I think that Joe Joyce is on the way to being a very good fighter. Now, in this fight, he was able to dominate him basically with the jab. And we're going to take a look at some clips starting in the beginning of the fight. Now, this clip here of Joe Joyce getting on the line with him and shooting that jab, I want you to pay attention to how he's getting on the front foot, shooting this jab. But if you look at his right glove, he's also catching Dubois' jab, right? Now, Dubois' lead right hand covering his supposed to be covering his center line is kind of low, and Joe Joyce's is much higher. So when Joe Joyce is landing his jab up here, which is actually the KO, as Joe Joyce lands a phenomenal left cross on Daniel Dubois' eye, causing it to close. I think he realized at that point he wasn't going to be able to stop the cross either, and harder punches were coming. But Joe Joyce was able to catch, a lot of the times, catch Daniel Dubois' jab and completely out-jab him. And his proper body mechanics and rhythm and fluidity in the ring, his economy of motion, just allowed him a lot more safe places in the ring than Daniel Dubois. As you can see, Daniel Dubois, number one, I want you to pay attention to, again, another thing to pay attention to is Daniel Dubois is always stepping with his jab here. And the reason he always steps is because he doesn't have an active guard. He doesn't change positions. He doesn't cross the line. And if we can see in Joe Joyce, he has what you would call the epitome of an active guard, constantly changing positions. Now, this clip, Joe Joyce shoots his jab. Daniel Dubois shoots his own jab and shoots a 1-2. But I want you to look at the economy of motion here. Now, normally when someone shoots a lot of jabs, you want to counter over the top of it. But Daniel Dubois had a very difficult time because after every one of Joe Joyce's jabs, he would move his weight off the line, land his power wherever it would land, and then move off. Even though he doesn't land this jab here, this scene here correctly illustrates where Joe Joyce's head is, kind of in this neutral zone here in the middle, and then when the right hand starts coming, how he takes his head and he dips it over his right knee, and he's able to create enough space to get away from Daniel Dubois' right hand. And while Daniel Dubois is loading up to put power in this shot, and he's not able to change positions after throwing it, Joe Joyce is able to reset and get back on the line before Daniel Dubois can follow up on that compromised position. And that's a big key and role in the fight, as Daniel Dubois was eating heavy jabs all fight long. As you can see, Daniel Dubois' jab going across Joe Joyce's left shoulder, which means that he's getting a piece of it on his right glove, and he's able to parry that shot and land an excellent shot. And that was something that happened all night long. Now, Daniel Dubois did have some success in the fight. He did land a couple of right hands and looked like he kind of wobbled Joe Joyce, but Daniel Dubois doesn't feint, he doesn't probe, and because he always steps with his punches and he doesn't have an active guard, it's really easy to read him, right? And look at what of a difficult time he's having reading Joe Joyce as Joe Joyce rocks from the front foot to the back foot to the front foot and able to disguise his punches here. And Daniel Dubois rocking a little bit, trying to keep that rhythm. He knows that there's a rhythm going on, but he doesn't know where that rhythm is supposed to be for him. He doesn't know where his rhythm is. So he's keeping his head on that center line, and he never moves it. And that's why he kind of gets dominated on the line by Joe Joyce, who has this amazing active guard. Front foot. Now he's on the back foot. Now he's entering the line with the jab on the front foot, peeling away from the right hand from Daniel Dubois here. Then getting back on the line. Front foot, back foot, jabbing, constantly putting pressure on Daniel Dubois. Again, another one of those things that's extremely difficult to stop if you don't have an active guard. As Joe Joyce, with his economy of motion and his ability to transfer his weight, change positions, and cross the line anytime he wants to, and with, quickly, succinctly, and choosing his positions well. Daniel Dubois can't adjust to the positions that Joe Joyce is making and giving him quickly enough. He's getting stuck on the line for these kinds of jabs over and over and over again. And these are all early in the fight. I think we're getting into the 5th round now, where we start looking at a little bit how the fight kind of layered through. But as you can see, Daniel Dubois having a terrible time getting on the line with Joe Joyce, as Joe Joyce dominates it with his jab. Now, most people think of Joe Joyce as being, on average, a slow fighter, but he puts on a faster pace than Errol Spence, and he's a heavyweight. He's constantly in your face, changing positions, asking you questions, pushing you off of your line. And someone like Daniel Dubois, again, who does not have an active guard, who does not change positions, is a sitting duck for someone who can so easily get their way to the front foot here, blast out of their position, land a jab, and then peel off the line. Again, this mechanically is the perfect jab. Transfers his weight to the front foot, crosses Daniel Dubois' line, shoots his jab, crosses his weight to the back foot, gets his head off the line, and then continues peeling to get away from the right hand. Again, mechanically, this is the perfect punch, the perfect way to enter the line without a feint or a probe. And he does it while being able to be defensively responsible, without compromising his technique. He lands a great shot. And this is in the 9th round that he's still moving like this. Again, Daniel Dubois does not have an active guard. He does not practice transferring his weight. He does not practice changing positions. This is also going to be one of those things that causes you later in a fight to slow down a lot, to tire out, is because you're not transferring your weight. You're spending so much energy trying to be on your center line that you're wasting all your energy. You're losing it, and you're not getting anything out of it. You're not getting any punches. You're not scoring, and it's hard to defend yourself. And as we saw in this fight, Daniel Dubois tired out, and he eventually got hit by this jab here. Again, pay attention to Joe Joyce. After he lands his jab, he immediately rocks his weight back, right? He's also still attempting to catch Daniel Dubois' jab, but also Daniel Dubois, not with an active guard, not rotating his weight, entering the line in the same position that he's been entering in the entire fight, and stepping with his jab. Again, just this massive economy of flaws in Daniel Dubois' technique and strategy. And all these things led me to pick Joe Joyce ahead of this fight. Now, someone pointed out in one of my last videos that I haven't been scoring very well on my picks for fights, right, for underdogs. Now, I've only been picking fights that make sense to think about in a boxing betting standpoint, right? Like Derevianchenko being the underdog against Jermall Charlo. I think that's ridiculous. Even if they have a rematch, I think it's ridiculous. Jason Rosario versus Charlo. Again, I got to go with Jason Rosario. Maybe that boy will do some sit-ups. Who knows? Devin Haney being a 16-1 favorite against Gamboa. I mean, I'll leave that one alone. But I also picked Povetkin to knock out Dillian White. And, spoiler alert, for the exact reason he got knocked out in. So, give me a little bit of credit, Mr. Guy in the comments. But this is one of those fights that I've been talking about for, nearly a year. And unfortunately, it kind of snuck up on me, and I didn't get to go place any bets. But some people on my Patreon did get to play some bets and stuff, so I hope some people cashed out pretty well. Yeah. Anyway, if you're interested, we do talk a little bit about boxing betting and boxing odds and stuff, and the more interesting fights on Patreon. There's also a ton more Danny Garcia and Errol Spence videos on my Patreon that I've been doing recently. A ton more film to do on them for a very interesting fight, as I think I'm going to be picking Danny Garcia for that fight. Not by a lot, but it may wind up being a lot. Who knows? But anyway, if you're interested, check out my Patreon. It's $20 a month, $20 to sign up. And yeah, I can teach you how to throw a jab like this. I can teach you to throw that left cross, how to change positions, how to transfer your weight, how to cross the line. And anyone if you guys are learning boxing for the first time, if you're not learning to transfer your weight, cross the line, and change positions as your primary focus in boxing, in everything that you do, you're with the wrong coach. So if they don't know how to teach you those things, check out my Patreon. I'll show you guys how to do it.